Today, we're going to talk about the 90s. What's up, everyone? It's Shayne, and I'm back today with another breakdown. This breakdown, I'll be talking about how I would approach the 90s. So before I break it down, I'll let you hear what it sounds like. Okay, so first things first before I break things down. The reason I decided to make a 90s type of sample is because I grew up in the 90s. 90s R&B is one of my favorite types of music. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to make music in the first place. It's because of the music that I heard in the 90s. And I know it's kind of popular right now with a lot of sample makers. And a lot of those sample makers are younger. And so they may have not grown up in the 90s, may have just heard about it. While I think a lot of these sample makers are very, very good at what they do, they're not making 90s type of vibes. And I think it's because they haven't really listened to 90s R&B. And this isn't any shade towards anyone. I don't do that. I don't get on anyone's internet to talk about others. But if you're going to make 90s R&B, you should at least listen to 90s R&B. You should at least listen, find the instruments and things that they used in the 90s and become familiar with those things. I think it'll take you a long way. Like, if you really love R&B and you really want to create 90s type of samples, we got to do the research. Oh, I'll get off my soapbox about that. One more thing too, you should know the producers that were pretty hot around that time, so you can research and kind of see what they did. A lot of them are still around. I mean, the 90s, obviously 10 years. So 90s R&B, it went through a lot of cycles. I mean, at the beginning of the 90s R&B, it was still like New Jack Swing. You had Teddy Riley, Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, Babyface, L.A. Reid. Even you had JD, Dallas Austin, especially with the TLC, Crazy Sexy Cool, how huge that record was. Listen to that record, You had Diddy, Chucky Thompson. You're just throwing people. You had Dark Child. You had Timbaland and Missy. The list goes on. And Jesus, you had Jodeci. And especially what Devontae was doing.
And I know a lot of people try to emulate what Devontae's doing. I ain't gonna try that because I don't know what that man was playing.
And another thing too with 90s R&B that I think seems to be missing. I know for me particularly, when I grew up, I went to church. I was in the choir. You played different instruments. You were around the music. I think maybe today's kids don't really go to church. Sometimes going to church and being around that environment and being around different players and instruments and things, you can learn a lot from that. So now I'm gonna get off my soapbox. How I started it was with a piano, 3 chords. I took these chords from a solid gold hit from the 90s. But if you want some solid gold hits, you can always go to cmpkits.com. I used Omnisphere for this, even though I used Rolling Cloud on the majority of it, but I like this preset because as you see, it's a regular piano, and then they have this MKS20, which is based off a Roland synth that was really popular in the 90s. So that's why I went with this. So I'll play the chords. The chords are just 3 chords, which is C sharp minor 7th, F minor, F sharp minor 7th, and then B minor 7. 3 chords. If you listen to 90s R&B, you should probably be able to tell where I got these chords from. I didn't really add any effects because, you know, in the 90s, they still use tape. So I just have oxide. I like the API preamp from UAD and just an EQ. I have a lead. For the majority of this, I'm using a Roland Cloud because in the 90s, Roland was very popular. They used Roland. They used the JD 800, which I'm using. It was a JD 900 too, D50. I mean, the JV series was very popular around there too. Was it the JV 1080? The lead is the JD 800, and the only thing on the lead too is, you know, I have oxide tape, preamp, EQ, and then I use microchip. I'm using the 1050. I created like this like trill kind of like transition effect. I put it through reverb, which is just this pure plate. Let you hear what that sounds like. I added a pad, which is the JD 800 again. It's just the beginning pad, and I'm just playing like this C sharp minor 7. Then I created another pad, which is just the same chords up here that I used. I'm using that good old JD 8000. For the bass, which I'm just bouncing off the root and the fifth, I'm using the DX7 in this lately bass. And the reason I use that is because this lately preset bass, they used a lot in the 90s on a lot of hit records. It was through a Yamaha synth though. I forget the name, but if you use your Googles and type in lately bass in 90s, you'll find a lot of information about it. Now on my bass, I do have it going through an amp, which is this UAD amp, and then also a decapitator. And then I added some perk clav, and then I put Echo Board Jr. on it. Another perk effect. Added some rain. You know, in indie 90s R&B, they had rain in the video, you know, transitions and interludes, some rain, and then I added some more chime. And for the drums, the beat and everything is kind of modern, really. Clearly, that hi-hat is modern, but we're gonna go with it, right? On my drum bus, I do have like this API because I like how drums sound through the API. Been on my master because it's the 90s. Put it through the Apex and I used Fairchild. That's my sample. That's my take on the 90s. I hope you got some value from it. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you liked it. Just leave a message in the comments and I'll respond back. I'll see you on the next one.